It's official, Tesla has started deliveries in Canada next week. But first, before we get into all of your Tesla stock news, and yes, we're going to go over the short position, option activity, all of the news today, but holy crap! Tesla stock is up 0.75% following TLT, or long duration bond yields, that are actually falling today. Not quite what you would expect, considering private job creation totaled a stunning, as CNBC says, 233,000 jobs in October, far more than expected. The expectation was around 115,000 job ads. This was more than double that. This was over a 2 standard deviation beat. So why are bond yields actually falling today? Well, it could be due to the fact that the US economy only grew at a measly 2.8% in the third quarter. Less than expected. Analysts were expecting 3%. The rate last quarter was they were expecting 3.1% for this quarter, and 3% was the Q2 number. So GDP is declining, far from negative, far from recessionary levels. It's a lot of government spending propping things up. Deficit spending, 6-7% of GDP is very recessionary-like government spending. So, of course, we're not going to go into a recession right now. I really haven't been concerned about the economy, at least right now. I do think there will be a growth scare at some point in spring of 2025. We're not there yet, but GDP was weaker than expected, causing bond yields to fall about 2 basis points today. But if we look at the totality of the bond market, it has been very volatile. At one point today, we did hit a low on 10-year treasuries of 4.20%. So you've actually climbed 5 basis points from the low of the day today. So, I mean, that's not as good of a day as it looked like, but you're still seeing 10-year treasury yields actually falling today, which, as I explained in the last video, is really the sole thing that is kind of guiding Tesla here. As 10-year treasury yields go higher, it not only just affects Tesla's business, as Tesla is buying down interest rates on car loans that they are doing, that hurts Tesla when rates go up, but it also just makes growth stocks less attractive. If you can get a 4.3% 10-year treasury yield, like you're going to lock in 43% gains or so over the course of 10 years. Why take long-term risk in Tesla if you're guaranteed 43% and your money back? Risk-free if you hold for 10 years. That's kind of the argument. If 10-year treasury yields were 3.6%, like they were on September 18th when the Fed cut rates 50 basis points, it's a lot easier to justify taking that extra risk in equities, because now you're only going to make 36% over 10 years and, again, get all of your money back. So as yields go higher, it pressures Tesla stock. Yields cooling down today is helping Tesla. Now, I do think part of this drop in 10-year treasury yields, the rise that we've seen in TLT, and again, the first hour or so of the trading day, TLT was really running here. You did sell off a lot. Now you're trying to run back up here, and the chart is kind of inverse. So when this chart goes higher, bond yields are actually falling. When this chart goes lower, bond yields are rising. So you've seen a lot of volatility in the bond market. I think part of this sell-off in yields that you've seen today is due to the Trump trade. Let me explain this. Wall Street's been fearful about a potential Trump presidency, what that could mean for deficits and government spending. And in all actuality, I think that trade is a little overblown at this point, and I think you were just giving some of that back. Now, we'll see where the day ends, but that would make the most sense to me. people are like, maybe it won't be as bad as we think. We also had a lot of bad news in the land of semiconductors today, which is really dragging down Nvidia. Nvidia is down 1% today. You also have Apple falling over 1%. Apple's reason for the decline is a little bit different than semiconductors like Nvidia. You did have AMD that reported earnings yesterday in after hours. AMD is currently down about 10% at the time of recording this video. But one of the bigger concerns is Supermicro. Their stock plunges 30% as auditor resigns after raising concerns months earlier. So, yeah, not the greatest look. Supermicro down 30%, being a close business partner with Nvidia just doesn't look good for the whole sector. Ernst & Young resigns as Supermicro's auditor last week after raising significant concerns over the company's internal controls, board independence, and accounting practices. EY said in its resignation letter it was unwilling to be associated with management's financial statements. So that's probably not gonna be good. Nevertheless, today equities are performing okay. The Russell 2000 is up 0.58%, again largely dictated by what happens in bond yields. They're falling a little bit today, so the Russell's outperforming. The Dow is also outperforming, up 0.36%. The S&P 500 is up 0.16%, and the Nasdaq is up 0.11%, which is really lackluster considering Google was up 6% today. Really, that sent Meta up 1%, Microsoft up 1%, heading into their earnings that will be coming out momentarily. As we can see from the earnings calendar, you have Microsoft and Meta. These are your big dogs that are going to move the broader index here today and after hours. But you also have Coinbase, Robinhood, Sonova, Etsy, Riot, Roku, Carvana, and Starbucks. Tomorrow morning, you have Uber, Peloton, Merck, ConocoPhillips, SiriusXM, Altria, MasterCard, Estee Lauder, Kellanova, Norwegian Cruise Line. Thursday and after hours, you have Amazon, Apple, Intel, Atlassian, Eldorado Gold, and United States Steel. And then Friday pre-market, you have Fubo, Chevron, ExxonMobil, and Wayfair. And I really can't even stress how important Meta and Microsoft earnings are going to be. Again, I think expectations are a little bit higher now following Google's earnings. Google had good numbers across the board. The expectation was set low, so the bar was low for Google. They did well. They beat that bar. Meta's bar is much higher. Investors are expecting around 20% year-over-year revenue growth, so that's going to be a little bit harder to beat. And then Microsoft's bar is set a little bit higher than Google as well. So if we are going to get, mediocre or just okay earnings, it may not be enough for specifically Meta. I know Microsoft has fallen a little bit more, so that one is really a toss-up. Now, why I mention this, if you're invested in Tesla and maybe you're all in on Tesla, you don't care about these other companies will affect the S&P, it will affect the Nasdaq, in which Tesla is a part of. It's not just bond yields that affect Tesla, right? Obviously, exclude the company, any company-specific news. Bond yields and what happens in the broader markets, whether there's more fear or greed, that tends to impact Tesla as well. So let's assume there's a little bit of a sell-off from now until the election. Tesla would probably fall in that instance if that scenario does play out. Do I know if that's going to play out? No. But at this point, I wouldn't bet against it. But I do have to say, I am impressed with the ADP report that came out today. 2 standard deviation move higher than expectations. It was double what the markets were expecting. That's kind of crazy. Now, Wall Street is really looking ahead right now to Friday's jobs report. The non-farm payrolls have weird expectations. So it says here that the consensus is 115,000. The forecast is 180,000. JP Morgan, some of their traders, Morgan Stanley, have estimates that are less than 100,000. Different people publish different estimates, but these seem like they're a little too low, especially following the ADP report. So I think investors were a little impressed today. We will have more to talk about in regards to all of this, in the next video, we will cover these big tech earnings, Meta, Microsoft, other names that you need to know in the next video. But first, we do have all of your Tesla stock breaking news today. As promised, we were getting to it, but there was other things that also needed to be discussed. It is being reported that Tesla's FSD V12.5.4.2, starting to become a bit of a mouthful there, if I'm being honest, is now rolling out for Hardware 3 owners. Tesla has just released a new video of its Cybercab and teased ride-hailing a bit. Tesla is showcasing the interior screen on the Cybercab and the ability to video call that you will have if you take a Cybercab ride. Tesla also says that its Cybercab will automatically adjust to your climate, seating position, music preferences, and more before it arrives. You know, and let me share something with you that actually happened last night, a conversation between, me and my mom actually, where my sister needed a ride home, and I don't live very close to them. I'm like 45 minutes away. I don't have time to do it. I said, why don't you just call an Uber or have her call an Uber? She's 20. And she's like, I don't think that's a great idea because you don't want your kid obviously riding with strangers. From my perspective, Uber's not really unsafe. I think Uber drivers are more unsafe in all reality than Uber passengers, just based on, what I've seen. Nonetheless, I was telling my mom about Tesla's Cybercab and the robotaxi that is going to be unveiled. And I asked her, would she feel more comfortable letting her daughter, which is my sister, again, she's 20, she can make her own decisions, but letting her go in a Cybercab? And she said, absolutely. And I asked a couple of other different people just to spare some time here, and they said the same thing, that they don't want to get into a car with a random person, but they would be more than willing to get into a car that drives itself. I thought that was fascinating. And I will mention that I live in Michigan. It's not like Uber's huge here. Not too many people are accustomed with Uber and this demographic. Most people own their own vehicles. Most people, don't need to call an Uber. But that was still kind of one of those conversations you walk away from and you're like, yeah, that's bullish. That's bullish as hell. Just wanted to share that with you. Let me know if you've had similar conversations with people that you know with kind of the pros and cons of the Cybercab or robotaxi ride compared to an Uber ride. Is your immediate family, friends, kin under that same kind of logic that they don't want to take a ride with someone, with a random person, but they would take a fully autonomous ride? I would love your thoughts on that down below in the comment section. Waymo has just announced they are now providing over 150,000 paid robotaxi trips per week, up from 100,000 per week in August. Waymo's entire robotaxi fleet is now driving over 1 million fully autonomous miles every week. Which some of you guys might say, oh crap, this means Tesla's falling behind. Obviously not. If you understand what Tesla's doing compared to Waymo, I'm not going to get into the details too much, but Tesla is trying to launch a service for the masses. Waymo is really going city by city by city, and they're doing it at a very slow pace. But the more successful Waymo is, the more successful Tesla will be. It's going to be a little bit easier to get regulatory approval, as Waymo is already doing all of these robotaxi rides. The public is going to be a little bit more trusting of Tesla's robotaxi service when it launches, because perhaps they've seen Waymo vehicles before. And honestly, I think Waymo and Tesla can be wildly successful both in this area of the economy, because there's such an untapped need. It's hard to not be successful. And starting this Wednesday, all the battery EVs imported from China into Europe will face an extra tariff that can go from 7.8% in Tesla's circumstance to 35.3%. The new duty is on top of the current 10% import tariff. The reason for this is because European automakers are getting absolutely destroyed from Chinese car companies. Volkswagen just announced yesterday that they were closing down 3 manufacturing plants in Germany and laying off tens of thousands of employees. Now, Germany is in a recession, okay? Germany's not in a great place. Europe's not in a great place as is. And now you have this extra competition that has come over from China in recent years that is making things even worse. Nonetheless, Volkswagen's profits fell 42% in Q3, while vehicle sales fell 8.3% year over year. Volkswagen recently again announced plans to shut down at least 3 factories in Germany, laying off tens of thousands of staff and shrinking its remaining plants in the country. BYD's revenue in Q3 came in at 28.2 billion, surpassed Tesla's 25.2 billion for the first time, but BYD's Q3 net income was 1.63 billion versus Tesla's 2.2 billion. So that means BYD brought in more top-line revenue, they brought in more dollar hollers, but they did not keep as many dollar hollers. Tesla has them beat by quite a large margin still. And in even simpler terms, that just means Tesla is more profitable than BYD. It's also being reported that the Boring Company's tunnel at Giga Texas is inching closer to completion. It looks like the tunnel itself is pretty well complete. You just gotta do the entrance and exits kind of paving for these tunnels. Option activity for Tesla stock today is quite strong from hedge funds and institutions. You have seen 50 different trades totaling $19.95 million with a positive order value of 64%. Tesla's short interest of free flow after recently rising has slowed down, currently sitting at 2.84%. You have $20.59 billion currently sold short in Tesla stock, totaling 79.33 million shares. Here on the day today, you can see return shares of 1.43 million and borrowed shares of 307.7 thousand. That means you actually have 1.13 million shares being covered on today, which helps explain Tesla's almost 1% positive day today. Google Trends data for Tesla in the United States is tilting downwards, especially for the Cybertruck now at 35, the Model Y at 25, the Model 3 at 21, the Model S at 10, and the Model X at 8. But guys, remember this. Forget everything else. Do you remember the Cybertruck halo effect that everyone talked about and theorized about over the coming 1 to 2 years? Well, I think it's getting pretty close to starting. I think it's starting to have some impact. I just got a call from someone I don't talk to that often, and they videoed me the Cybertruck. People are captivated by this product when they see it, and it's one giant rolling advertisement. And in terms of 2025 and 2026, I don't think we should rule out a halo effect for the entire Tesla brand anytime soon. I think that's probably going to be a positive tailwind for Tesla over the next 1 to 2 years at least. Now, back to the real video here. If you look at Google Trends data for worldwide, if you look at all countries, you're actually seeing increased activity in the Model Y. So the Model Y recently hit a low of about 31. It's still moving higher, currently at 36. So that's actually a good sign. The Model 3 has moved lower from 34 to 30, and the Cybertruck has went from 39 to 34. The Model S is staying at 13, and the Model X went from 10 to 9. So overall, it's a pretty solid worldwide search trend data for Tesla. Over on StockTwits, sentiment for Tesla is bullish at 55, message volume is normal at 48, and the participation ratio is normal at 54. On the day today, the percent of stocks trading above their 50-day moving average is up to 58.66%, up 2.69% today. actually pretty good. It's better than what we've seen recently, where just more stocks after more stocks are breaking below their 50-day moving average. You're actually seeing a bit of a rebound today. Tesla is currently running about 4,000 different ads with Google, and global inventory numbers have recently shot higher for the Model Y, down a little bit, about 200 vehicles overnight to 8,100, the Model 3 at 5,400, the Model X at 4,200, and the Model S at 2,800. With that said, Tesla stock on a technical basis is kind of in no man's land. I do think to some degree an important level could be right here, and I mean, I don't really want to messy the chart too much, but I will. It's this level. Okay, see, this is the level you found some resistance back here in late July, mid-July, and then you found a little bit of support back here on October 1st. You did end up falling, and there was a bit of a gap down over the preceding couple of days, and then you really gapped down here on October 11th, right, heading into Tesla earnings. You can kind of see from a technical perspective why this level could be important. It does seem like if we're going to get support for Tesla, it's going to be around this 260 level, and it's sitting right at about 260 here on the chart. So I think that's important if we continue to hold support like we have seen over the past, 4 or 5 trading days ever since earnings. Support at this 260 level, that's a really good sign. Now, if Tesla stock sells below 260, that's a bigger problem. And I wouldn't hold my hat, literally hold my hat, on any particular outcome here just because there's going to be a lot of uncertainty. There's going to be a lot of volatility heading into the election. And honestly, it's a coin toss between does Tesla fall or rally into the election. But if I were to point out a level that is important, it is that 260 level. Staying above that is really good. Below that, it's not the end of the world. You should actually kind of expect it if we're going to get more volatility before the election. But, it's one of those things. Like, it'll be good if we stay above it, but it's not the end of the world if we don't. If that makes any sense at all. You're far above your 200-day, 100-day, 50-day, 20-day moving average. You're above all of your major moving averages. Your 20-day moving average could be the level that we would test if extreme volatility does come into markets, and that is down at about $237 per share. If we go back to those levels, then that could be an area to start stepping into a position or growing your position in Tesla. It'd be about a $25, $30 discount per share between what Tesla is trading at now. Is that a certainty again? Absolutely not. But honestly, I wish Tesla would fall again. Between now and midpoint 2025, I hope Tesla stock falls. I would love to buy more with the newfound 20 to 30% delivery guidance that Elon announced on the earnings call. I don't think we're going to get a large decline, but definitely you should welcome it nonetheless if we do. So let me know what you think about all of this information down below in the comments section. That's it. You guys have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.